Almost every model that you make is going to start off with some basic shape, and usually that's going to be one of the primitives. And we've got your standard primitives like the box, ball, disc, cone. There's some that aren't so standard like the capsule, and of course we've got the more drop down. And I thought we could take a look at the first item in the more drop down, which is the Platonic Solid tool. I like to refer to it as the Dungeons and Dragons, the D&D dice tool. Maybe that's just the geek side of me, but I found that this tool is the easiest way to create a four-sided dice, a six-sided dice, an eight-sided dice, 12-sided dice, and a 20-sided dice. Yeah, again, that's the geek side speaking. But let's just take a quick look. So we've got our four-sided dice here. Now for all the tools, all you have to do to change the size, well, you could use this mini slider and scrub through, but you can also just click on the tips there, and you can size it that way, and you can grab the handle in the middle and move it around. Just like with the other primitive tools, if you right click, that's committing, okay, and you could be on to the next one and right click and commit and on to the next one. Of course you can change that before you right click again, okay, but I'm gonna undo, and let's just start over. Okay, so we've got our four-sided die here, and that's what I'm going to refer to it as. It's just easier than tetrahedron. I'm just going to call it what it is because it's four sides. Now the thing about platonic solids are that they have the same number of faces meet at each point. Okay, so no matter what point you look at, the same number of faces meet. Now there's a couple in here that aren't actually platonic solids, but they come in handy, and I'm glad that we have access to them. So we've got our four-sided die, and from the shape, I'm going to change it to a cube, which we're all familiar with, which is a six-sided object, but it is a platonic. It's the most common platonic solid that you'll find because, again, no matter what point, it has the same number of faces meeting at it. Okay, so we can, of course, change the size, but you'll notice that it's going to be a perfect cube. It's going to be like holding down control when using the box tool. So you don't necessarily have to come into this tool to create a box, but if you ever wanted to make it perfect and didn't want to question it, you could come in here, which to tell you the truth, I never do, but it is there because it does belong in this option. Okay, so we've got the eight-sided object. I'll just call it the eight-sided die, and we can change the size of that as well. And again, these are going to be all triangles, but no matter what point you look at, they're going to have the same number of faces meet at that point. Okay, and then we have now this object right here. This isn't actually a platonic solid, but it can come in handy. We've got triangles and squares, and we've got the face there. I haven't really used that one that often, but next up we have the 20-sided die. Sorry, the 20-sided object. There's that geek talking again. But we have the 20-sided die, and of course I've used this quite often, especially if you want to create a collection of D&D dice, or role-playing dice. After that, we've got our 12-sided object. Okay, and you can see a bunch of pentagon shapes there that make it up, and this, of course, is a platonic solid where no matter what point you look at, the same number of faces meet it. Okay, and then the last one isn't a platonic solid, but this one's quite interesting. I used this one on a project where we had to recreate Bit from the movie Tron. Without it, it would have been a little bit more work to get there. But you can see that you've got triangles and you got the pentagon shape. Okay, so again, we can always create some of these outside of this tool, and I thought we could just take a real quick look at that. So what I'm going to do is go and create this four-sided object. Then, of course, the cube. This is going to be an obvious one of how we can create it. And then let's create the 20-sided object right here. Okay, so I've got these items, and I just want to show an alternative to making these as well. So for the four-sided die, if I come over to, I'm just going to put those in the background. If I come over to layer 2 and move over to the cone tool, Well, that doesn't look like a four-sided item, but if I were to hit N for numeric and change the sides to 3, we get the same thing. Okay, so that's an option right there. What about, well, the cube is going to be an obvious one. If we take the box, hold down Control, and constrain it, we've got the same thing that we have here. And then for the 20-sided, we can come over to the ball, N for numeric, go to tessellation, and scrub all the way down to 1. And we'll have the 20-sided die. Okay. Now, one thing that you might think about doing once you've created these, if you want to dress them up, is to come over to the multiply rounder tool, N for numeric, and we can, I'm just going to size that up a little bit, maybe add a couple, we'll just do 6 rounding polygons. And now we've got a nice little rounded edge, which looks a whole lot better, looks more realistic, it's catching the light. And then all that's left to do, if you want to take this all the way, is Boolean in the numbers, and you've got your collection of die, and you're ready to start role-playing. So that's just a quick look at the Platonic Solid tool, which can be found under the Create Primitives More drop-down, and there you go.